Hey guys, hope you're doing well. Let me get out of here. Okay. My name is Kwabena Duku, and today we're going to be going over evidences for the resurrection. And today we're going to be focusing on the principle of embarrassment. I intend on keeping this short, kind of just like a bite-sized little video. What I'm going to do, first of all, is I'm going to explain the principle of embarrassment. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about its efficacy, and then we're going to go over just 3 examples in Scripture. So, let me actually full screen this first. All right. So, when investigating a historical recounting of an event, right, there are a myriad of tools that a historian may use to determine the legitimacy of the claims presented in the narrative or the verbal retelling. And one of these tools is the embarrassment principle. The embarrassment principle holds that the likelihood of a narrative being embellished is greatly diminished if we find that the narrative includes embarrassing details about the author or the subject of the narrative. The logic behind it is fairly simple. The authors of an embellished text would likely sensationalize their composition in order to make it lucrative or as attractive as possible in order to forward their cause. That's in stark contrast to someone who is just retelling a story. They couldn't care less about how attractive the narration looks, as they're just, again, retelling a story. As the New Testament scholar puts it, New Testament scholar Brian Chilton, if the presented event contains details that are embarrassing to the writer, the earliest leaders, the founder, or the cause, then it could be said that that event is authentic. When it comes to the historical account of the resurrection of Christ, there's no lack of embarrassing details, and we're just going to look at 3. But I do encourage you to read 1 Corinthians 15. That is the narration of the resurrection. All right, so first example, the cowardice of the first disciples in Mark 15. When Jesus was being crucified, with the exception to John of Zebedee, who was instructed to take care of Mary, the disciples were nowhere to be found. Peter and the men ran away, while it was the woman, in fact, who stayed attended to Jesus until his death. With respect to the time period, that is highly inconceivable that an author would include such an embarrassing detail about himself. I just realized I forgot to change the screen. That is the first example on the left there. And the second example, Peter's denial of Christ in Luke 22. So, the same Peter who was considered the first leader of the church denied Christ 3 times. This detail is such a blemish on a person's reputation that if he intended to make a fabricated story look true, why would he document such an embarrassment? Again, of course, unless it were true. The third example, probably the biggest, one of the biggest, arguably, the Jews themselves consider crucifixion a curse. In the Old Testament, you can read all about that in Deuteronomy 21. As Brian Chilton puts it, if a Jewish group was going to invent a movement, the last thing they would do is have their invented hero die on a cross. The crucifixion of an invented hero is probably the biggest embarrassment to anyone in Jewish antiquity, much less the Messiah. And I don't believe that can be stressed enough. I would say that it's inconceivable that an author would include such an embarrassing detail about a narrative or the subject of his narrative, especially at a time like that, unless, of course, it were true. So, in conclusion, the narration, the historical recounting of the resurrection of Christ passes the embarrassment principle with flying colors. The fact that the disciples were willing to put themselves and the subject of their narration in bad light is an argument in itself against fabrication. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time.